see. All right, so now I'm recording. So I'm just going to do with this EX1-1 open, I'm just going to go up to my file and then save as, and then I'm just going to save it where I've got this. If you don't have a folder available to save it in, just click on Browse, and I would just go to your desktop and then click New Folder, and then name it whatever you want. So I'll call it MS Excel, just so I've got it. And then once I've got that folder, I'm just going to call this Payroll Calculator, because that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to calculate some payroll. All right, so just calling it Payroll Calculator. And then now once we've got this renamed, we can start playing around with it a little bit. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to just take a look at the Excel window a little bit. And again, this is kind of an introductory class. So if you are more advanced in Excel, I'm sorry if some of this stuff will bore you right away, but we're going to take a look at a little bit of this Excel window. And so again, up at the top here, and I talked a little bit about this in one of those introductory videos, this up here is our quick access toolbar. And this is going to be where we can have just quick features that we can use within the software. And if there's something you want to add here, this is totally customizable. So you can see right now, I've just got an option to do a quick save. I have my undo and redo buttons right up here. I also have a new workbook option, and then I've got a spell check up here. But there's also, if you click on that little more options, a little down pointing play looking arrow. If I click on that, you can see there's a lot of other options that I can add very quickly to this, but I can also say more commands. And then when I do that, I can open just about any command that you have in your ribbon, or any command that Excel has, you can add that very easily to this. And so again, a lot of this stuff is totally customizable. I'm just going to cancel out of this. So you can really build it to how you want to work with it. Then also we've got at the top, this is our ribbon. And within our ribbon, we've got different tabs. So we're going to be doing a lot with our Home tab today. But we've also got our Insert tab, our Layout tab. And these are going to be, as we work through the software together, we're going to be looking at different tabs, kind of focusing on each different lesson. But with this Home tab, it's going to be a lot about formatting the fonts that we're using, how we're aligning things within the cell, how we're applying number formats to the data and stuff like that. And then right up here, we've got our name box. And so this is going to be where it's going to display the cell name. And the cell name is determined by the cell that we're working with at the time. So right now I've got my insertion pointer, my selection into cell A1. And so you can see right up here in the name box, it tells me I'm in A1. If I say, okay, let's go to cell E5, and again, I'm referring to a cell address, it's going to be where the column and the row meet one another. And so in this case, cell E5 is going to be column E, row 5. And then again, you'll see it'll indicate that I'm in cell E5. So it's giving me that cell address. And again, so the cells are going to be determined by which column and which row we're working in. And so we're going to go ahead and we're going to start by going to cell E4. And so E4 is just going to be the location, and these are going to be labels. And so you can see we've got some column labels right up here along this row 4. And then in column A, we've got some column or some row labels as well. And these row labels are going to be the participants or the employees that we've got working for us. Now, if I click on over to cell E5, so do all of you, and like one of you can chime in or something, do all of you have a blank cell here, like a nod or something? Okay, so some of you have data here? Okay, so if some of you have data here, I think I posted one file, but I also deleted it, the information, because I wanted to kind of build some of these formulas with you. And so if you've got data in here already, that's totally fine. If you don't, that's great too, because we're going to be building it together. If we click in cell E5, we can see that we've got this cell where we're going to run a calculation to determine the regular pay for our employee. And so if this Peter Brooker, we can see we don't have any information in here, but we know that he's worked 40 hours, 40 regular hours, and he makes $16.75 an hour. So we could take a calculator and you could type 40 times 16.75, or another way that we're going to do this is we're going to use these formulas to build this sheet for us. So I'm just going to go ahead and click in cell, I'm going to click in cell E5 again, and I'm going to type the equal sign. And what the equal sign does is it indicates to the software that we're going to enter a formula into this. And back in the day when I started using Excel, you had to type in everything. So if I wanted to run this calculation, I would just go ahead and type in equals, and I wanted to multiply the hours by the hourly rate to determine his regular pay. So I would type in equals B5, and then times, the asterisk is going to be that operator to indicate a multiplication problem, and then times D5, and then enter. And so when I do that, it's going to return the data that I typed in. Now, the thing that I don't like about entering the data by typing it is that we have a lot of room for user error. Most of the mistakes that are going to be made by the software in Excel are going to be user entry data errors. And so the nice thing about Excel is that at a lot of it now, it allows us to just point and click on things. So again, I'm going to go down to cell E6, where we've got Lucia Cucci. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to enter my equal sign to indicate that a formula is coming. I'm just going to click in cell B6 this time, and then you can see it automatically populates, and then it also gives us B6 is in blue, and then it highlights B6, the cell, in blue, which is nice because it's going to show us which cells we're working with. Then I'm going to hit, again, my Shift-8 or my asterisk key, whatever you're going to use, and then click in cell D6. And now when I do that, again, D6 is in red. It highlights that cell in red. And I'm going to go ahead and hit my Enter key, and it'll automatically run that calculation for us. Now, the nice thing about Excel is we want to do this. We want to keep doing these calculations. So instead of saying equals B7 times D7 equals B8 times D8, what we can do is we can have the software build this for us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to cell E6. And then you can see I've got cell E6 selected. It's got that green border around it. And in the bottom right corner, we've got this little, it looks like a little square. This is our fill button. So right now, my selection pointer, it's this big kind of bold plus sign. And what that means is this is just going to indicate where my mouse is and what cell I'm going to select. So if I bring it over to cell I4 and click, it will select cell I4. But if I have cell I4 selected, you can see once I hover over the cell border, it turns into this little four-way pointing arrow. And that four-way pointing arrow is basically a quick way to cut and paste a cell, like cut and paste the value of a cell. But then there's also another option. If I hover over this little corner, that bottom right corner, that fill handle, that's going to give me this kind of crosshair looking thing. And that's what we want to look for when we're kind of copying, when we're filling these calculations. So again, I'm going to come over to cell E6. And then in the bottom right corner, I'm just going to hover over it, get that little crosshair. I'm going to click and hold with my left mouse button and then pull down. And when I pull down, it's going to turn whatever I've selected green, or it's going to kind of outline it in green. And then when I release the left mouse button, you can see what it does is it automatically copies that calculation. So you can see here I entered equals B6 times D6. If I come down one, you can see B7 times D7 E7 or B8 times D8. And so what it's doing is the software is automatically running what we call a relative reference. And when we talk about relative references, it means that it knows that if I'm in row 5, column E, and the calculation I'm running is in cell E5, I'm multiplying B5 times D5. If I come down a row to row 6, the formula is saying, oh, hey, you just multiplied these 2 cells over on the left-hand side. I think that's what you want to do again. I think you want to keep on copying the same kind of relative formula. And so it recognizes that, okay, now I'm still in row 6. Let me use the row 6 data. When I come down to row 7, let me use that row 7 data. Now, there's going to be times where we don't want to use this relative reference, in which case it's called an absolute reference. And I think if we don't get to that today, we're going to get to that on Wednesday. But it's really handy that you can tell the formula, okay, wait a minute, this is great that you're running these calculations for me, but that's not how I want to run it this time. I want to run it a little bit differently. But again, with that autofill, it will just allow us to take that formula, grab that little fill handle in that bottom right, and just pull on down and fill that formula over and over and over again. I mean, and if we had it, we could go down multiple cells and it will still run that calculation, even though there's no data in there. But once we put data in here, and again, you don't have to do this, but if you put data in here, it will keep running those calculations for you. All right, so I'm just gonna delete that information right there, or undo it. So we've got that. So we've got this original formula created once. So now I want to go ahead and determine overtime pay. I'm going to make it easy. I'm not going to do like time and a half. I'm just going to say that overtime pay at our company, and again, the company that we're working for is Reason to Go, right up here in cell A1. We're going to do what is just double time. So when I come up to cell F5 this time, again, we want our overtime pay to be double the hourly rate, that 16.75. And the nice thing when we're multiplying is one of those operations where if you have 12 different numbers, it doesn't make a difference what order you multiply them and how you group them. It's always going to be the same. The same thing with addition. No matter what order you add numbers together, they're always going to be the same. No matter if we say 5 plus 7 is 12, plus 4 is 16, as opposed to 5 plus 7 plus 12. I mean, so we get that same, no matter how we group it, no matter how we commute those numbers, we're always going to get the same data. So when we're working with strictly multiplication, it doesn't really make a difference how we build this formula. And so in this case, our overtime pay is going to be, and again, I apologize, Excel is kind of based on that principles of math. And so if there's something that you don't get about math as we're going through it, just say, wait a minute, Shane, I don't get that thing about math. And I'll talk about the math stuff too. But it's, once we get into some of these more advanced formulas, when we're going to be doing orders of operations, that at that point, just say, all right, Shane, why are we doing it this way? And again, we're here to learn this together and answer questions. And so if there's anything that you need clarified, by all means, just jump in and say, stop, clarify this for me. But again, we're going to sit with this overtime pay. We're going to build this formula where it's going to multiply the overtime hours times double the hourly rate. And so if you're thinking about it in terms of an order of operations kind of formula, it would be something like equals. Again, we're creating a formula, so we're always going to start with equals. We're going to equals 4 times, and then it would be like the quantity of 16.75 times 2. So back in if you were thinking about it in terms of orders of operations, it would be, open parentheses, 16, put that D5 times 2, and then close the parentheses. And again, so what that formula would do, it would first multiply the hourly rate times 2, and then multiply the number of hours that we worked that were overtime hours. Since we're doing multiplication, again, you don't have to use those parentheses because the value is going to be the same either way. We can just say equals and then click in cell C5 times D5 times the number 2, and then just type in the number 2. And then I'm going to go ahead and say enter. And so then we can see that the overtime pay for Peter, who worked 4 overtime hours, he's going to make $134 in overtime pay. So now I've got a couple numbers that I can play with. I've got his regular pay, and then I've also got his overtime pay. And so I'm going to go ahead and run the calculation to see how much Peter is going to be making overall. So I'm just going to come over again to cell G5 this time. And again, we're running a calculation. So we want to tell the program, all right, a calculation's coming. Equal sign is going to start that. And then this time we're going to say E5 plus F5. And again, that's going to give us this formula to calculate the gross pay, which is just the regular pay plus the overtime pay. And then enter. And then we can see, all right, Peter's going to make $804 for this pay period. So we've got this, so we've got some data entered again. And again, we can do that same thing. We can click in cell F5, and then we can drag it down to copy that formula. But we've got multiple formula here. And so what we can do is we're going to select these two together. So I'm just going to click in cell F5 with my left mouse button, drag it across to cell G5, and then release. So I've got both of those two selected together. And then I'm going to grab that fill handle. Again, it's going to be the little crosshairs in the bottom right corner, and then click and hold with my left mouse button, pull down together, and then it automatically will fill both of those formula at the same time. So we don't have to do one of them at a time. We can do all of them together. All right, good so far? All right, cool. All right, so now one of the nice things that we can do is, and then again, I apologize for those of you that are running Macs. This is not going to work. What I'm going to show you right now won't work with a Mac. You can do this. You just can't do it this way. And so one of the cool things with this newer option, and it's going to be this little guy right down here when we look at this, is I want to create sums for this data. So if I wanted to do sums, a bunch of them at a time, in this case, I want to sum the hours that I work for my company, the overtime hours that I work, the gross pay, the overtime pay, all of that stuff. I can come over here, and I'm just going to select the whole range. So I'm going to select in cell B5, and then through G14. Again, so I'm just going to left mouse click in cell B5, hold, drag over and down or down and across, either way. And then when I do that, you'll see if you're using a PC running Windows, you've got this little option down in the bottom right corner called the Quick Analysis tool. And what that Quick Analysis tool is, it's a little function that will allow you to run a lot of different alternatives to calculate these numbers. So if I click on that Quick Analysis tool, you can see that there's a bunch of different things that I can do. I can do some formatting with these numbers. I can create charts based on this number, the numbers that I've selected. I can create totals. Again, I can create totals horizontally, and I can create totals vertically, by column or by row. I can also create a table out of this, and then I can also create some spark lines. So you can see right over on that side, I've got the little spark lines that are popping up. And so if you wanted to run the calculations, for those of you that are using a Windows PC, you could click totals. And then if I wanted to do this, if I wanted to sum my totals at the bottom, I could click that sum option. and then it automatically populates it right below there. If I wanted to create averages, I could just hover over averages. And again, it's going to give, this is what that's called at the bottom row. That's called a live preview. And so what the Microsoft Office universe does a lot is if you decide you want to look at to see how some formatting that you want to apply is going to work, it will give you a live preview before you make that selection. And then again, the counts. And the counts are just going to count the number of units that I've selected. And so this would be using that quick analysis tool. But I know there's a couple of people using Mac, so I'm not going to do it that way right now. What I am going to do is I am going to use my auto sum function. And so I'm going to come down here to cell A15. I'm just going to go ahead and say total or totals, because it's going to be, we're going to have multiple totals down here. And then I'm going to come where underneath hours, so in cell B15. And then again, back when I first started using the software, the way I always used to enter it would be, I would create, and do not, by any means, do not do it this way. I would click in cell in, B15, type my equal sign, and then go ahead and start typing B5 plus C5 plus D5 plus, just to run those calculations down. But again, this was when I started using the software back in the 90s. But nowadays, it's so much easier because we can just click here, select that cell, and then right over here in our editing group, in our home tab, we've got our AutoSum button. And if I just go ahead and click on that little sigma that is AutoSum, you can see it right away. It says, hey, you've got a bunch of numbers that are relative to the cell that you're in right now. You probably just want to add these numbers together. Is that what you want to do? And again, the software is saying, hey, Shane, I think you want to, since you told me equal, and you click that button that says AutoSum, I assume you kind of just want to sum all of the numbers directly above where you are. And again, you can see it recognizes that cell B4 is a heading, it's a column heading, it's text. So it's not including that. And then it's just selecting the rest of that data. And so you can see that whenever Excel selects a range, it's going to give you a colon. It's going to give you the first cell, colon, the last cell. And so here it's saying, hey, I assume you want to do a sum of the range B5 through B14. I'm going to go ahead and say, yep. So again, you can either hit the enter key, or right up here in your next to your formula bar, you've got this little check mark. That's the same as hitting the enter key. It's just an acceptance button. So I'm going to say, yep, that's what I want to do. I'm going to click there, and then shazam, it populates that cell value right in there. Pretty cool. All right. And so again, the same thing. If I wanted to do this again, I could come over and do the same thing, or since I've done it already, I can just take this, grab that little fill handle, fill it right across, and then populate that over there as well. And then again, so you're seeing that it's creating these sums over here. All right, and again, so for me, it's not as important if we have this hourly, the calculation of an hourly rate over there, because that really doesn't mean a whole lot to add up the dollars per hour. So I'm just going to get rid of that one. But it's a very quick way to run these calculations at one time. And again, we could have used this, selected that range, used our quick analysis tool, and then we would have gotten our totals at the bottom. It would have been the exact same numbers. Questions so far? And again, if you got a question, just like pop in and unmute yourself. If nobody has a question, I'm going to go ahead and I'll just keep going. All right. So now I want to do some formatting with my numbers. And so I'm going to go ahead. So we know that we're working with dollars and cents with this project, again, because it's a payroll calculator. And so I've got this hourly rate. So the hours and the overtime hours are just going to be a regular whole number. The hourly rate, the regular pay, the overtime pay, and the gross pay, these all are going to represent dollar values. And so I want to just make sure that I'm indicating to the people that are going to be looking at this sheet, this worksheet, that hey, these are dollars. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and format it that way. And so you can see right now we've got this, the hourly rate is a decimal. We've got this, 2 digits, a decimal, and then 2 decimal places after it. For the most part, some of them that are just, whole numbers don't have a decimal point at all. And then over here, again, if we don't need a decimal, it's not displaying it as a decimal. But when we're working with dollars and cents, it's helpful to have that. And so there's 2 different ways that you can apply number formatting using the dollars. We can apply what's called the currency formatting, or we can apply what's called the accounting formatting. So the currency formatting, with the currency formatting, it would be good for when we're calculating how much money somebody makes an hour. That might be one, or like the price of like the sale price of an item or something like that. And so there's a couple different ways that we can go in and do this. I'm going to choose this first one, this hourly rate. I'm going to click and hold with my left mouse button in cell D5, and then just drag through D14 to select that range. Now, once I've got that range selected together, right up here in my home tab, number group, and again, I'm in my home tab. This is my number group right here. You can see I've got all these different ways to format numbers. So I've got this right over here, this $sign. This is just a quick option to apply the accounting formatting. Next over, I've got my percentage. Again, this will just quickly apply percentages. And then this one is my comma. And so what the accounting style is going to do, it's going to give us a $sign. It's going to give us those thousand separator, like the comma separator at the thousands. And then it's also going to give us 2 decimal places. The comma style is going to be exactly the same as the accounting style, only it's not going to have the $sign on it. But we also have an option to apply a currency style to this. And so if I come over where it says general right now, if I come and click on that little more option, that little down pointing arrow, you can see this will open up a lot more options to us. And so you can see currency is right down here. And again, you can see it has the $sign and it has the 2 decimals. But I'm going to show you in just a second, it's a little bit different than the accounting formatting. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say, yep, I want to apply the currency style to this. So I'm just going to click on currency. And then you can see right away, it automatically gives me the $sign with the 2 decimals. And this we call, when we're applying the currency formatting, we're using what's called the floating $sign. And what the floating $sign is it adjusts with the number that we're using. And so I'm going to grab this, I'm going to increase the column width of this just a little bit. Then I'm going to also do the same thing with my regular pay. I'm going to increase the column size a little bit just so you can see what I'm working with. So now I also want to apply this $sign to my regular pay, overtime pay, gross pay. But with this one, I'm going to use the accounting formatting because it's not a unit price. It's going to be a calculation, or it's going to be like an overall value. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select E5 through E15 this time, because again, I've got this total row down at the bottom. And then here I want to apply the accounting style. And so again, I can just click, I can go up here and apply accounting, or I can just click on this $sign right here, and it will automatically apply that accounting formatting. And so you see the difference with the accounting formatting and the currency formatting is that when we use the accounting formatting, it's going to populate the $sign way over on the left side of the cell. So the numbers are always going to be aligned to the right, but this $sign is going to be fixed at the left side of the cell. And again, with the currency style, our numbers are still aligned at the right, but we have this floating $sign that will float with the numbers. So if for some reason, let's see who, if I'm just going to say that, I'm going to undo this in a second. Let's say this person, Juan Martinez, made $132 an hour. You can see it will automatically readjust that dollar sign to align with the numbers, but I still apply that currency formatting over here. And again, that's why we call it a floating dollar sign, because it floats to a kind of adjust to wherever those numbers are. And then again, I want to use that same formatting, that accounting formatting with these other values. So I'm just going to select F5 through G15, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to click on that accounting formatting, or again, you can choose this option right here. It will do the same thing. And now the nice thing with the accounting formatting is that you'll notice that anytime that there's a 0 value, we get this little dash right here. And so what that is for is really when we're working with the accounting number formatting, it's about making things easy. And so it's going to align, it's always going to align our decimal and numbers on the right, that dollar sign on the left. And if there's a 0, it's going to indicate that right away, so we can see that, hey, there's no value here. It's, if we're quickly running over the numbers that we're looking at, we can see that there's no value in that cell. Now, to take it a step even further, I'm going to select the range again. When we're working with creating spreadsheets that analyze like dollar data, a lot of times, if you think about if you do any kind of investing, and you'll get like a semi-annual prospectus for that organization. That prospectus is going to be maybe 150 pages long. And it's going to be a bunch of numbers compiled together. Well, those numbers, it takes a lot of ink to print those things. And if you were printing them for thousands of customers, that's a lot of ink. And so a lot of times what you'll see is this the top row and the total row will have this, either the currency or the accounting formatting applied, and then the rows in between. So I'm going to select E6 through G14. Again, I'm just left clicking in cell E6, dragging through cell G14, and then releasing the mouse. And then again, I applied the accounting formatting here. So I'm just going to click comma style. And so when I do that, you can see it will take out that dollar sign, but I still have where a 0 value is, I still have a line. Now, if you think about the way this will work is if we take out dollar signs one at a time, and we take out all the 0.00, that's a lot of ink that we can save. And so typically, if you're just running a quick report, it's not as much of an issue if you have dollar signs and decimals here. But if you're running a lot of information, this is one way that you can save, you can save a lot of money in ink costs. Now again, if I apply that same principle right here, and I say, you know what, I want to apply that same, I don't want the dollar sign here. If I apply this comma style, you'll see what happens is now it kind of messes up that alignment. And so with the accounting style and the comma style, it's not going to be a true, oops, sorry, Becky, you have a question. I'm sorry. Go ahead, you can unmute yourself. Becky, did you have a question? No? Okay. And again, if you have a question, you can kind of jump in. It looked like she had her hand raised. So I'm just going to lower her hand for a second. All right. So if we're looking at that accounting formatting and the comma style formatting, what they're doing is I'm gonna kind of show you a little backstage view of what it is. it's, sorry. What it is if I click right here, and this is called my launcher. If I click on that launcher, I can kind of get an idea of how these numbers are being created. And so you can see with the accounting formatting, I've got my 2 decimals and my $sign. With my currency formatting, right now, if it's a negative number, it's going to be commas or parentheses around it and maybe a negative sign. And so it's going to space it a little bit differently. And so that's why when we applied this comma formatting over here, it kind of unaligned our numbers. Well, I'm going to undo that to bring them back. And then in this case, I'm just going to select that. I'm going to have that range selected. And if I click on my little number launcher again, and again, these are called launchers, I'm just going to say, I don't want to include a $sign. I want to say none. And then I'm going to say, okay. And then you can see all of our digits are still aligned, only this time we don't have that number sign there. All right. Any questions so far? So far, so good. And again, I feel like I'm going through it slowly, but if I'm going too quickly, just say, Shane, you're going a little fast. So far, we're okay. All right. So now let's go ahead and we are going to use some more of these formula. So I'm going to come down into cell A17. And again, we want to kind of see what our average salaries are and our high and low ends. So what I'm going to do in cell A17, I'm just going to select that and I'm going to type average. And then I'm not going to, since I'm on my keyboard right now, I'm not going to use my mouse to do this. I'm just going to hit my down arrow to go down to that next cell below it. So cell A18. In here, I'm going to type maximum and then down one more again and minimum. And if you don't want to have, if you don't want them all to be caps, they can be lowercase too. To be consistent, I should probably, if I'm going to use it that way, I should probably have my totals in all caps as well. But again, we're learning, so I don't expect to have all this formatting done absolutely perfectly. And so you can see here, I'm deciding that I want to run these average calculations. So I could add up all these numbers, and then again, we've got 10 employees. I can add these numbers and then divide by 10, or I can just click in that cell, again, B17, and then in my home tab, I'm back in my editing group where we have that auto sum. Before we just clicked on that little sigma icon or the auto sum, and it automatically created that calculation for us. This time I want to go ahead and click on this little down pointing arrow, this more option. And then when I do that, you can see I've got a few different options that I can choose. I'm going to say, I want to calculate my averages. So I'm going to go ahead and say average. All right, and then so you can see that it says, okay, you want to average. I see there's nothing right immediately above it, but you've got all these numbers and then some words up at the top. I think you want to go ahead and run, calculate this average. Now, if I go ahead and select enter, you can see the average hours an employee works is 68.7. And you're like, whoa, wait a minute. Nobody has 68 hours. The most anyone has is 40. But one thing you'll notice is if I click here, it's giving me the average of cell B5 through B16. And if we look down here, cell B15 is a total. So we're like, whoa, wait a minute. We don't want to include the total in that. We want to include only those numbers. And so the thing to remember is that whenever you're using that auto sum feature, it's going to predict what it thinks you want to do, but what it thinks you want to do and what you really want to do are not always the same thing. So I'm going to undo that for a second, and then I'm going to go back and say my auto sum. I'm going to go to average, and this time it's giving me this range. And I say, you know what? I don't want to include that number. And then I can go ahead and I can select my own range. So I'm just going to select cell B5, drag through B14 and release, and then hit enter. And now you can see 37.8, since we have 10 employees and they have 378 hours, then 37.8 seems legit for the average hours that the person is working. Now I also want to see like the maximum number of hours a person works and the minimum numbers an hour of a person. So I can go ahead and do that same thing. I'm going to select cell B18 where it's got that maximum. I'm going to come back up to my editing group in my home tab, select max this time. And then again, like we talked about before, it recognizes that we have one sequence of numbers directly above us, and then there's a blank space. And so the program is saying, I think you want to make a maximum calculation of all of the numbers directly above it. And again, we have to be smarter than the software. Like, no, that's not what we want. We, again, want to select that same range. I'm just going to click in cell B5, hold it, drag through B14, and then release. And then go ahead and accept it, enter, or click the little check mark. And then you can see the maximum number is 40. And then we're going to do that same thing with minimum. Click in cell B19, our auto sum, min. And again, we're going to need to select that range we want and then go ahead and enter it. And then we can see, all right, the minimum is 29. That looks right. The maximum is 40. If for some reason Gustav Klimt only worked 18 hours this week, if I type in 18, you can see now it changes my total, it changes my average. Nothing happens to my maximum because I didn't affect that maximum, but now I've got a lower minimum. Instead of 29, now my minimum is 18. And so again, the beauty of using these formula is that it will automatically recalculate everything for you. And so now that I can see I've got my average, maximum, and minimum created right here. Again, I'm just going to select that range, click in cell B17, drag through B19, release, and then fill across. Just grab my little fill handle and release, and then automatically those calculations are run for us. Now the only bad thing is that we don't have the number styles that we've used applied to it. But again, that's really quickly we can do that. So I can say, yep, what we did is we had the accounting style formatting applied here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use what's called a format painter. Now, has anybody used the format painter before? The format painter is a really cool tool. And we're going to get into it a little bit later when we're doing some really cool formatting. But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want to apply the same formatting that I have here, which is that accounting formatting. It's got the fixed dollar sign with the 2 decimals. I'm going to come right up here to my clipboard group, and I've got this little thing that looks kind of like a paintbrush, and that's my format painter. I'm going to click on that format painter button. Now the thing about the format painter is it's only good for it's like a single-use tool. You can use it one time and then you're done with it. But so like right now I can click, hey, I want to apply the same formatting right here. And then you can see I applied it. I had that, my selection pointer was that little paintbrush looking thing. And again, I'll go back here, click on it. So you can see right now my selection pointer has that little paintbrush next to it. I can click again and apply it, but now that paintbrush is gone. A way that you can keep that on is double click in it and then just click and hold and either click them individually, or I can click and drag through the range that I want to apply that formatting to. Now, the bad thing about it is now that I've got this format painter on, if I accidentally click somewhere, like whoopsie, now I've applied that formatting to that thing as well. So you just have to remember, I'm going to undo that. You just have to remember that when you're done using the format painter, you have to return to the format painter option and then reselect it to turn it off. But the format painter is going to apply all of the formatting that you've applied to a cell to a different cell. So let's say we had like right up here. I'm going to come up and say, with this reason to go, I'm going to apply bold formatting. I'm going to apply the Algerian. No, I don't like that Algerian. I'm going to apply a different. I'll do the Bookman Old Style. So I'll do a Bookman Old Style font, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. So I'm going to say it's going to be a 14-point font, and then I'm going to change the font color to orange or something. So now I've got all this different formatting applied. If I want to do the same thing with these, all I have to do is select the cell that I want to copy, click on Format Painter, click and hold, drag through, and then you can see I'm applying that same formatting. Now, I don't really want to apply that formatting right there at this moment. Well, I'm going to change it a little bit later, but that format painter is going to take all of the formatting within a cell. So whether it's a number style we've applied, a font size, a font color, if we've applied conditional formatting, you name it. Whatever formatting is applied to that individual cell, the format painter is going to pick it up and reapply it somewhere else, which is a really cool feature. All right. So good so far? Okay, cool, cool. All right, so now we've got some of this. I'm going to also come up here. Uh-oh, sorry. It looks like my internet's getting a little weak. I'm going to come up to cell D5, and I'm going to go to that format painter again. Oh, come on. Try that again. There we go. Apply that format painter, and then apply the formatting right there. And again, it was one shot. It was good for one shot, and I just clicked and held and drug it through that value. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at a different way to view our worksheet. So right now, this is our normal view. And so this is typically the way that we're going to be working when we're working in Excel. But if you come down to the bottom right, you've got, this is our status bar, this kind of long gray bar down here, from ready all the way through to our zoom slider. This is our status bar. In the status bar, we've got a couple different options. So if I click, the first one is normal, which we're in right now. If I click over to this next one, it's my page layout option. So I'm going to go ahead and click there. And then this is going to show us what it's going to look like were we to print. And so you can see this is where we can add a header and a footer to this. I'm going to go ahead, come up here in this center header section, and I'm going to go ahead and type my name. So you can do the same thing if you're playing along. And then down in my footer section, I'm going to scroll. And then down in the footer section, over in this right footer, I'm just going to click down here. And then I'm going to add a date to it. Now I can either type the date, or I can come up to my header and footer tools. So again, these are contextual tools. They're only available when we're in a footer. So if I was in, so you can see right now, I've got my header and footer tools. If I were in click right here, if I was in my normal view, those tools aren't available to me. They're only available when I'm working in my footer. So again, I'm going to go ahead and select my header and footer tools. And then here, I'm going to go up to these elements, the header and footer elements. I'm going to go ahead and say current date. Now you'll see that it's got this weird, it says like ampersand bracket date bracket. It gives me this weird data here. But once I click out, you'll see it automatically populates that with today's date. And so this is what our page layout looks like. And then another layout we have is called our page break preview. And the page break preview, oh, do I have something selected here? Let me check. View. No, it doesn't look like I've got anything here. Okay, that's why. All right, I'm down too far. Okay, so with this page break preview, the page break preview is it's going to show you how the pages will break. So if I had, for example, if I had more data on this, I'm going to go ahead and come back to my normal for a second. So you can see this is where my page break will be. If I had data over here, and I went back to my page break preview, come on. You can see now I've got this data over on 2 pages. But if I decided, you know what, I want all this data to be on 1 sheet, I can come over and grab this little dotted line, click and hold over it and pull it. And now it's gonna rescale all of my data. And so now if I were to print it, it's gonna make everything small so it can all fit on 1 page. I'm gonna undo that because I don't wanna do that. But again, whenever, if you wanna see how something's gonna look when it prints, you can click on that page break preview, and it's gonna show you where your page breaks will be. But then again, once you've done that, when you come back to normal, you're gonna get these little dashed lines that are gonna indicate where your pages will be broken. So I can see after column G, but before row 48 is what will print on 1 page. All right, so I'm gonna get rid of that stuff. All right, and again, so that's changing our worksheet views. And then now again, if I want to do apply some styles to my sheet, where Microsoft has a lot of ready built-in styles. And so right here with this totals row, I may want to apply a specific style to that. You know, I want it to look a different way, and there's a quick way to do that. And it's the same thing with our headers. So right here, I'm going to come to A4, and I'm going to apply a heading style to this. So I'm just going to select A4, click and hold, drag through G4. And then right in my styles groups over here, I'm going to click on that little more button. And it's going to show me a bunch of different quick styles available to me. I'm going to say I want to apply this heading 3 style. And so you can see the heading 3 style is going to turn my text blue. It's going to make it a little bold. And then it's also going to give me this kind of hazed out blue underline or border. Now, if I come back, you can see there's my heading style applied. And I can also apply a total style to my total row. So I'm going to say my total row, select A15 through G15. And then again, come over to my styles group and then select this total option. Now, when I do that, one thing you'll notice that I'm getting, whoa, I've got this weird number here. If ever you get that, all these little pound signs or hashtags or whatever you want to call them, all that's indicating is that the number that's displaying in the cell is a little too big for the cell width. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to come up between G and H, like between these column headings. And then right up here, you'll see if I hover between them, I get this little 2-way pointing arrow. And I kind of did this earlier. If you wanted to make it wider, you can just click and hold and drag it out, and it will make it a little bit wider. But if you hover over there and then you double click with your left mouse button, like click, click, that's what's called an auto fit. And so what it's going to do, it's going to automatically fit that cell width to accommodate the largest or the widest piece of text in that whole cell. And so you can see that right here, we've got our Jean-Marie Le Pen is our widest name. But up here, we've got this project leader division that's kind of rolling into another cell. If I double clicked here to make it a little bit wider to accommodate the names, you'll notice it's recognizing that there's something in cell A2, and it's going to apply that wider formatting to that. And so you just have to be careful, like that you know what kind of data is in each one of those rows or columns before you start doing these auto fit options to it. All right, so we applied a little bit with our number formatting, and now we can go ahead and apply some text formatting as well. So I'm just going to say that with my people's names, I'm going to go ahead and select A5 through A14. I want to make their names bold, so I'm going to apply the bold formatting to their name. And then up here in these headings, I want to apply some different formatting to those headings as well. And again, when we're doing this, I'm going to go ahead and let you do whatever you want with it. I might choose some options, but by all means, like, play around with it while we're doing it. You can choose cell styles. You can do play around with the font size, font color. I'm going to come up to this A1, and I want to apply a bunch of different stuff, a bunch of different formatting to it, but I want to choose a style. So I'm just going to come over here and say, I want to apply my title style to it. I can get over there with the title, and I'm just going to click on title, and you can see it changed it for me. Now it's an 18-point Cambria font, and the font color is this dark blue text 2 color. And then I want to go ahead and come over here, A2 through D2, and I'm going to give this like a subtitle formatting. So again, I'm going to come over to my styles, and then here I'm going to go ahead and do we'll do a heading 2 style to that one, just to give it a little bit different. So you can see this one is going to be the Calibri 13-point as opposed to a Cambria 18-point. And then if I want to do that same thing, I can click on my payroll calculator, click on that format painter, and then just drag across that to apply that same formatting. And again, a lot of the formatting options, I'll choose something, or I may follow the book. Sometimes I won't. But when I choose these different options, different font colors, different styles, different text fonts, go ahead and play around with it. Do whatever you want. You don't have to turn this into me to get a grade on it or anything. I want you to be able to explore this stuff comfortably and freely. So go ahead and apply whatever you want to it. All right, so we've got some of that basic formatting stuff done. Now, the nice thing, again, like we talked about earlier, is once we've got this data in here, if for some reason we had a change in data, then it will automatically recalculate all these numbers. So if, for instance, if instead of no hours of overtime, Lucia Cucci had 7 hours of overtime, well, again, it's going to affect her pay. She's now going to have her regular pay will be the same, but her overtime pay will be affected. Her gross pay will be affected. It's going to affect the overtime hours total. It'll affect the average. It won't affect the max because there's people with more, but it will affect all this other stuff. So Lucia, we're going to change hers to 7. And then you can see all of these things change instantly. And if for some reason I decide, what do I need to do? The person that's making the most money on my payroll is Ricardo Strano. If I needed to get down to, $6,400 gross pay for a period, what do I have to do to Ricardo's hours to get there? Well, if I wanted, I can click over here in Ricardo and look at 8, maybe change it to 5. And then, okay, if I move them to 5 overtime hours instead of 8, it brings me down a little bit, but I still need to get a little bit lower. Try 2, and there we go. So 3 would actually do it. So if I change Ricardo's overtime from 5 to 3, then I can get within my payroll constraints. And again, using just being able to toggle in and out of these numbers is just a quick way to do this kind of what if analysis. Now, there are more advanced ways that will be doing these We might get to it in lesson 4. I might be able to show you. It's a more advanced feature, but there are ways that we can create complex scenarios to say, if I want to change a certain cell value to X by changing these 2 different cell values, what am I going to have to do? And the program will instantly run a calculation for us. So there's a lot of what people generally do with Excel is really basic, really simple. It's not really testing the software at all. Hopefully, by the time we're done working together, you'll be testing it a little more than you're doing right now. That's my goal, at least. I don't know what you're hopefully going to get out of it, but hopefully I want you to feel comfortable with working in Excel, but I also want you to kind of stretch out what you're able to do. Because ultimately that's what's, if you're ever looking for a new job, or if you're in the job market, improving these skills is what's going to help you, set yourself apart from other clients or other job seekers. Or if you're looking for a promotion, set you apart from your peers as well. Right, so we've applied a lot of different stuff to this, and right now, normally when I'm doing work in a document or a workbook, I'm constantly saving. So I know that I haven't saved in a long time. So the first time we saved it, it used to be called EX1-1. We made that change to payroll calculator. And so now we don't have to do that like file save again. We can just come up here to this little, it looks like a floppy disk, like an old school floppy disk. Just click on that and it will automatically update. That's an update save. So it's automatically going to update our changes that we've applied. Another way we can do it is, I'm a big fan of shortcuts. And so Control S, if you hold the Control key down and hit the S key, that is going to be the quick save, or the quick way to do a save with Excel. Now, if you are running a Mac, you're going to have to use that. It kind of looks like a weird cloverleaf looking key. I think it's called your Apple. It used to be called the Apple key. It used to have a picture of an apple on it. Now it's got kind of like a cloverleafy looking thing. If you're using an Apple computer, that's what you'll use instead of a control key, because the control key works a little bit different in the Apple system as it does in the Windows system. All right, so any questions so far? All right, cool. So we don't really have enough time to go into another exercise, but there's a couple things that I can also show you. We're going to get into them in a later lesson, but I also think they're really cool skills to be able to use right away, and they're not that advanced, but it's a quick way to visually analyze data. And what it is, it's using a conditional format. So you're looking at numbers and applying, or you could be looking at text as well, but you're going to apply a condition to that range of numbers, so you can return a value. So you can return a value that's going to kind of give you an indicator of what it looks like. And I'll show you what I'm talking about here, so I'm not kind of jumbling my words. So let's say we want to see who our highest paid people are and who are the people that may be earning the least right now. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my gross pay option. And so I'm going to select G5 through G14. Again, just click and hold with my left mouse button, drag through. And then in my Home tab Styles group, I have this little option. It looks like these red and blue cells. It's called Conditional Formatting. I'm going to click on that little down pointing arrow, these more options, and it's going to give me several different options of what I want to look at. So I've got these highlight cell rules, and if I hover over highlight cell rules, it's going to give me a bunch of different options. And so again, when we hover over these other ones to the right, it's going to give us a live preview of what it might look like were we to apply that. So if I want to say like greater than, and greater than a certain number, it's going to show me what it's going to look like. If I want to look at like my top and bottom, like my top 10 items, my top 10%, if I want to look at things with data bars, you can see I've got these, it's showing, again, it's looking at the highest value, and then it's basing all these other, the lengths of these other bars are based on that highest value, like in proportion going down. So this is a way that you can see, you know, who's making your most money, who's making your least money. But if you know you've got a lot of that stuff in the middle where it's not really as distinct, I'm going to go to this highlight cell rules. Actually, I'm going to choose my top and bottom rules. I'm going to choose the top and bottom rules, and I'm going to choose this top 10 items. Now I've got 10 people. So if I choose the top 10 items, obviously all 10 of them are going to be lit up. If I choose the bottom 10, all 10 of them will be lit up. I want to look at the top 3 and the bottom 3. So I'm going to go to this where it says top 10 items. I'm going to click on it. And then it's going to, again, it's showing you all of the items are lit up. I'm just going to say right down here, I want to choose only the top 3. So I can choose, select either navigate up and down with these arrows, or I can type the number 3. And then to me, that the top values are generally good. So I don't necessarily want them to show up in this red, because red to me means warning, you know, hold on, caution. So I'm just going to click right over here, and I'm going to say, I want to choose this green with dark green text. So I'm going to choose green fill with dark green text, and then you can, and then apply OK. And then so you can see that now my top 3 values have that conditional formatting applied. And again, if something changed, so if, for instance, Alice was making 15 hours of 14 hours of overtime, now she's in the top 3, and so she bumped that other, like the number 3 person out, and she moved into that top 3 category. And again, so the conditional formatting, it's going to apply formatting if numbers meet a specific condition. And again, the condition that we applied is that I want to only focus on the top 3 values. And again, I can do that same thing. I'm going to select that same range, and I'm going to look at the bottom 3 values. And so again, I can come up to my conditional formatting, and then I'm going to look at top bottom rules. And then this time I'm going to choose bottom 10 items. And again, if I choose bottom 10, it automatically, all of them are highlighted. Again, I only want to focus on my bottom 3. And then this time I can say, yeah, I'll apply, you know, I can say, yep, apply with that light red fill, dark red text. I'm going to say OK. And then now I can see who are making the lowest amounts of pay, like gross pay. Another way I can look at it is looking at those data bars. If I wanted to see how my employees relate to one another in the amount of money that they're earning, like hourly, I can, again, that would be another instance where data bars would really be comparing apples to apples. Whereas the gross pay, we've got some people that aren't getting 40 hours a week. Some people are getting a lot of overtime hours. If we want to compare like how people are paid, you know, apples to apples, that would be more of that hourly rate. So I'm going to go ahead and select that range, D5 through D14. And then again, this time I'm going to go to my conditional formatting and look at my data bars. And this is going to give me a better idea of how people are paid. And again, the highest value is always going to represent like 100% of that cell being filled. And so you can see $21 right now is that Kiko Miyoshi. That's that high value, and it's all the way to the end, and then everyone else is kind of proportionate to that. So again, you can use gradient fills or you can use solid fills. Now, when I'm working with Excel, one of the things that you'll come to learn about me very quickly is I like using gradient fill, and I like using 3D charts and things like that. So anytime it gives you a different option, I'm typically going to choose a gradient version of it. And since we've been applying these blue styles, like our title style is blue, those headings are blue, our total style is blue, I'm going to kind of stick with that design theme. So I'm going to use this blue data, these blue gradient filled data bars for mine. And again, so it's kind of showing us, based on hourly rate, who's making the most amount of money for our company. And again, I've got some more changes applied. I'm going to go ahead and do a quick save to apply those changes that I've made. All right. So and again, this, you know, a lot of this doesn't seem like a whole lot to me, but if you don't know this, it's probably a whole lot. It's probably a whole lot to you. And again, always, like, do not ever feel like self-conscious or something if you need me to stop or take a break or slow down or something. I'm totally fine doing that. I've been teaching for a long time. I don't, you know, I've got a thick skin. If you're like, Shane, you're not explaining this well, Shane, you're going too fast, just tell me, and I'm, you know, I'll do whatever I need to do to make sure that you're learning and understanding this stuff. That's what I'm here for, and that's what you're here to learn. So whatever's gonna work best for you to learn this, that's how I want to be able to teach you. All right, so any questions about any of it so far? And again, it seems like it might be a lot, but it doesn't really seem like a lot to me. And, you know, and maybe a lot of this stuff is some stuff that you're already familiar with, in which case it's just kind of a review. And we're typically going to go over several different ways to do different things in the software. So, you know, by all means, if you are looking at something and you're like, oh, no, that's not the way I do it, you know, you can chime in, and I'm happy to show you different ways of doing it as well.
Shane.
Yes.
I have a question. I somehow got in maybe 10 minutes after you started.
Yep.
Is there any manual or anything we could look at, you know, for
the manual is in the Google Classroom, but I also did record this, so I can post this recording, so you can like watch the first couple of minutes if you need to.
Okay, great.
All right.
So is that posted in the Google Classroom, or?
I'll post it in the Google Classroom in that lesson 1 section.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions on, or comments or whatever? I mean, by all means, let me know.
Shane, I had a question.
Yep.
And thank you, because I have learned a few new things.
Okay.
And but my question is that like, if you want to put like a date in a column and you want to copy that date down the column.
Yep.
I know there's a way to copy that same date. If you just clicked on the one, it will do it like every day after that.
Right. So let's say, so we've got, I'm going to go right over here. So what Brenda's kind of talking about is that kind of the default is, if I were to copy this date, and I don't like this formatting, so I'm going to choose a little different formatting so it's easier to see this. I like, come on, this formatting. All right, so with this, so what Brenda's saying is that if I were to fill this down, and then you'll notice that I'm getting a screen tip right by my little cursor, and it's telling me what's happening. So right now, when I move down a cell, it thinks, hey, you're moving down a cell. I think you want to add a day. And so right now you can see that right here it says the 5th of March, 21. If I come down, my little screen tip says 6 Mar 21. If I keep going, it says 17 Mar 21. And so if I let that go, it's going to fill that date. And so what Brenda's asking is, if I don't want the dates to be sequential, what do I do? And so like right down here, I've got these options. I can just say copy cell, and it will automatically just copy that first cell and it's not going to give me the sequence. Does that make sense?
Yep, thank
Okay.
you.
Yep. All right, all right. There we go. No, come on. There. All right. All right. Any other questions about this? And again, if there's something that for some reason, if you're embarrassed to ask a question, email me or text me or call me or whatever. You've got my phone number, my email, my text number. It's in all of the communications that I've sent you. Like, by all means, feel free. All right, so if nobody else has any questions, I will go ahead. I can turn off this recording, and some of you are going to be hopefully joining me for Access after this.